Hello and welcome to the Avrum Rosensweig Show.
Welcome to one of the internet's best podcasts, where we dive deep into the lives of the extraordinary and fascinating people who leave an indelible mark on our world. Join us as we explore their captivating stories, remarkable achievements, and unique perspectives that shape history and inspire generations. Get ready to embark on a journey through the lives of inspiring people unlike any other.
Hello, folks, and welcome to the show. My name is indeed Avrum Rosensweig, and I'm just delighted to have you here. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for listening. The podcast has been up and running for well over a year now, and I believe I've done somewhere in the area of about 170 different shows. The idea behind the Avrum Rosensweig Show is to remind people of the beautiful things that we've created in the world, sometimes very challenging things, but the success that we have shown as humankind together. Now, I'm not going on the premise that there are no problems in the world and we don't have foibles. We do. But I think it's extraordinarily important that in difficult times, and I would argue it is a difficult time nowadays, to remember the creativity that so many people have shared and put out, the wonderful programs and projects that we have developed over thousands of years. And just to take a look at the window, I often stand on my balcony here in Toronto. I'm in the Shepherd and Bathurst area, and I look out and I am just overwhelmed by the incredible structure that I am surrounded by the roads, by the lights, by the cars that pass by here, the buses at 3 or 4 in the morning, that somehow there's a schedule that works. I'm deeply, deeply intrigued by this very short time that we all have on planet Earth and what we have created, what we have the ability to create. And I guess within that is the message that there's a lot of bad shit too. And we have to be cognizant of that. And we have to be aware of that. And we have to fight that, because at the end of the day, humankind has the ability to create gems and more diamonds, more precious stones than ever before. And I think we have to be conscious of that. We have to find a place of peace, a place of love, and a place where we can all work together to continue creating a planet, a world that we all share. Now, with that, today I am really deeply honored to have with me as my guest Igal Hecht, who is a documentarian, Israeli-born, and a very, very passionate human being about what he does. And over the next hour, you're going to hear a lot about that. So first off, Igal, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So a little bit of a background on you. You were actually born in Israel.
Right.
And in 1999, you founded the Chutzpah Productions. Great name for a company. Throughout your career, you have involved yourself in over 50 documentaries, 52, I believe it is, and over 20 television series. They have been screened in such venues as Netflix, BBC, Documentary Channel, CBC, Yes TV, HBO Europe, and many others. You're an award winner, and some of the documentaries that you have produced include The Story of Furious Pete, one of my favorites, and we had a little bit of a discussion about this prior to going to air, The Sheik. And for those of you who are passionate about wrestling, and why wouldn't you be?
Exactly.
The other name, the Sheik, is exactly right. The other name is known as the Iron Sheik. So we'll touch on that a little bit. But
Sure.
The main reason that I want to have Igal on my show is because of a magnificent job that he has done in creating a documentary, which is called The Killing Roads. It's a nearly 2-hour film or documentary. And I must be honest, it was very difficult to watch. It was excruciating to watch. As the title suggests, The Killing Roads is replete with death. It combines an exploration of the slaughter by Hamas terrorists on a thoroughfare in southern Israel on October the 7th, with gut-wrenching testimony of survivors, first responders, and those who love lost ones in this brutal ambush. It takes viewers on a blood-soaked journey along the ill-fated roads, retracing the steps of the invaders and documenting their acts of carnage, starting at 6:30 a.m. So let's start somewhere halfway through the interview, and we'll go back to some of your original stuff later.
Sure.
How did you have the beitzim, as they say in Hebrew? How did you have the balls to create such a heart-wrenching documentary.
I always had beitzim or chutzpah, but this documentary was, I sort of really had to do it. You know, seventh hit, like everybody else, I'm online, all the deniers, all the anti-Semites start popping up, the protests here in Toronto, and things along those lines, and I'm angry. And what can I do? So first I start the things that I normally do: post stuff online, create short videos, help Israeli organizations that needed to get Hasbara stuff out there and interviews from survivors. So I was helping doing the subtitles. I was basically doing whatever I could just to get a feeling and a sense that I'm contributing and doing something. And then a video was released in which I saw Hamas terrorists sort of running down the road 232, and executing this couple. And I started realizing that a lot of the murders, a lot of the terrorism occurred on the road. Haaretz and the New York Times in November of 2023, I believe, came out with an article talking about the road, mainly about the bomb shelters, mainly about what happened to Nova survivors at the bomb shelters, but also about what happened at the road. And I started, as I was doing my research, you know, I found out that 250 people were murdered on that road. And some of them were from Nova, people who tried to escape, and others were people, everyday people who were on a jog or just going to the park, or it was a beautiful Saturday day that day. You know, it was just on the eve of Simchat Torah. So that got me thinking. And originally we were going to make a film about everything. So kibbutzim, Sderot, the roads, Nova, sort of like just do everything. But then in January or February, I reached out to my longtime collaborator, great Israeli producer and cameraman by the name of Lior Cohen, who I've made films with for the last 20 years. And I said, Lior, yalla, we got to do something about the roads and about the 7th. And when I first got to Israel, we filmed in a couple of kibbutzim. We filmed in Nir Oz, we filmed in Nirim, we filmed in the city of Sderot. And it felt off. It felt too much. I didn't want to touch Nova so much because I know there were like 5 or 6 films already coming out about Nova. And then I said, well, to myself and to Lior, what if we just focus on the road? Mm-hmm. And we were going to already start filming on the roads anyways. And so that sort of, with the amazing help of our fixers in Israel, we were able to get people beforehand and then during the filming as well that wanted to take part in the film, because again, no one was really focusing on the roads. The most of the focus, and rightfully so, was on Nova, because the tragedy there is just unbearable, and on the kibbutzim. But 80 people died in Sderot, and people died in Ofakim, and nobody was focusing on those people. There was another small party with about 80 people that 30 of them, or I think 50 of them, died as well. We filmed there, but we didn't include it in the film. So as we started filming, I started realizing that really the roads are the key story that I wanted to tell, because the horror of that day is so massive, right? 1,200 people who were murdered, more efficient than a day in Auschwitz, in less than 6 hours. The horror was so massive that I couldn't tell everything. This movie couldn't encapsulate everything. So I had to focus on one thing, and the road became that one thing, specifically road 34 and road 232, where the majority of the murders took place and the terror took place. And sort of that is the evolution of the film and how it came to be. Could not have done it without Lior Cohen. Like, I can't stress that enough. Usually people at the forefront, the filmmakers, quote unquote, get the glory or get the podcast or whatever it is. But this film could not have been made without Lior Cohen, who did just such a brilliant job filming it and really being there for me, and as I was for him, because it was such a hard film to make. Like, me and Lior have a dark sense of humor. Over the years, we filmed from Metula to Eilat in Israel. We filmed everything. We laughed. I don't think there was a moment of laughter once in the month that we filmed this movie.
Igal, you actually said in one of the interviews that you did that you shot this very painstaking piece of footage I think it was at a bomb shelter by the side of the road. And excuse me, after you were finished, you looked at Lior and he looked at you and you were both dumbfounded.
Fully. Absolutely. And it wasn't just there. I remember landing at 3 a.m. because I flew from Poland. And Lior picked me up. I was at Lior's place at 6. And by 8, we were at Nova. Right? We filmed right off the bat. And so I was still like on adrenaline, we started to film. And when you make a movie, there's sort of a disconnect. The camera's there, you're filming, you're there, but you're not there. You're there to do your job.
Yes.
But as the days moved on and we started talking to people and we went inside the bomb shelter, the bird bomb shelter or the bubble bomb shelter outside of Be'eri, you really start to get a sense of what happened. They painted over, right? They painted over bomb shelter, but you still see all the grenade holes inside the bomb shelter, and you start really realizing what they did to these people, and you get angrier and angrier. Now I've gone to Auschwitz 14 or 15 different times, right? I've been to the majority of the camps in Poland. I've been into Rwanda, making films about genocide there, in Cambodia, in Bangladesh. I've made films about the Yazidi genocide at the hands of ISIS. I have never been so angry. I've never been so angry because it was done to my people, more so than I was when I went to Poland, because this was so close to home. I had family fighting in Sderot for their lives, street to street, trying to keep Israelis safe. I had family and friends in Ashkelon being bombarded for days, for weeks. But then to be there on the roads and to realize that this was done to our people in the most horrendous and barbaric way, I was just so angry. And I'm still very angry. And for those who know me and for those who follow me on Facebook, I don't hide that anger. And I don't, and in the film as well, I don't give Palestinians an excuse. I don't just believe that it's Hamas terrorists. We've labeled this act of terror as Hamas, as if it's a different entity that came from above and placed itself in Gaza. Well, no, Hamas are Palestinians and the Palestinians are Hamas, as well as Islamic Jihad. 7,000 of them, 7,000, not 3,000 as first thought, 7,000 breached that border, came with a single purpose, and that is to murder Jews, to rape Jews, to kill, to burn. That's what they did. And people just want to gloss over that and just want to talk about Gaza as if, the 7th never happened. Nothing would happen in Gaza, absolutely nothing. If Hamas, if Palestinian terrorists, if Palestinian citizens from Gaza didn't wake up in the morning on the 7th and decide to murder Jews. And people forget that.
Igal, the name of your film, and we're going to show a trailer in a moment that it's on Vimeo, is The Killing Roads. And right. When I read your title, I thought to myself, yeah, like the killing fields in Cambodia. Is that the correlation?
Absolutely 100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely 100%.
And you were in Cambodia, right?
Yes, I was in 2008. In fact, a lot of people sometimes get it confused. They keep saying the killing fields. I'm like, no, that's Cambodia. Killing roads, same mindset of genocidal savages, but different titles.
Okay, let's show that trailer, and it's about 2 minutes long.
כל היישובים בלגן, מלא מחבלים, חדירות של מחבלים. אני פותח דלת של האמבולנס, בודק דופק, הרוג, עולה לאמבולנס, ממשיך הלאה. אני אומר, אני רוצה אנשים חיים לפנות היום.
אמרתי לו, רב, הם לא באים להציל אותנו, הם באים להרוג אותנו. אתה מבין שאתה הולך למות? כאוס.
השאיר אותנו שבורים.
הוא אמר לי, בואי לקחת אותי.
וניסיתי.
Hundreds of cars. 350 cars were burned.
And then 1,000 bullets started to go off. And then they threw a Molotov cocktail.
כולם מתחילים לרוץ לכיוון השטח. זה פשוט ירי שלא מפסיק. ממש טובחים באנשים.
They didn't have any way to defend themselves. And there wasn't help coming.
זה לגמרי כביש הדמים.
ואז אני קולטת את החוליית מחבלים, והם בעצם מתחילים לרסס אותי כבר מכל כיוון.
הוא התדרדר ונעצר פה, ליד המיגונית. פה עשו עליהם את הווידוי הריגה.
כשהוא אמר לי, אמא, אני לא מרגיש את הרגליים, מבחינתי הוא מת. זהו. וזה השבת השחורה.
Igal, kol hakavod to you.
Thank you.
How do you feel watching that today?
Yeah, it still makes me angry. You know, I had to do something last night for screening. You know, you watch it and it still gets to you. This particular moment there, we fought really to have it, and thank you to the Israeli band Knisiat HaSechel for agreeing. You know, there's a moment in the movie where we finally get to Nova, and it's the only time where we get to Nova. And you know, I was asked, well, why don't you just, you know, we leave a song on for 3.5 minutes, and I said that song is so powerful, and it was written many years ago. And this band Knisiat HaSechel used the voice of Amit Man, a paramedic who was murdered in Be'eri. And I remember Amit's story was the first one I saw on the 7th, because somebody posted a song of her singing, and I was haunted by it. And I really wanted to get that song in the movie. And, you know, Israel being what Israel, you connect with people. And to the band's credit, wonderful people. They just said, yeah, use it. Just use it, right? I mean, they didn't have to say yes, and they did. And it's a massive Israeli band. And I was so happy. I just sent them how we wanted to do it. And they were, I think, really touched by the fact that. And so I remember screening it, and some people commented because they knew who Amit was. That's the moment that always gets me in the entire movie. And it's not the gruesome moments. Somehow I am able to tolerate that. I don't know why, maybe because of the years of making movies about genocide, I'm able to sort of tolerate that, you know. But that's the moment that always gets me in the entire film.
So the footage that you gathered came from basically 3 different places. It's footage that you actually shot.
Yeah.
There's about 50 hours of footage in there from United Hatzalah, which is an organization that traveled throughout the country, basically collecting body parts, right?
That's
for halachic reasons.
No, I think that's Zaka. So United Hatzalah is an ambulance service. It's like Magen David Adom, and everybody was out there that day. Zaka as well. They do an amazing job, and you know, the trauma that those people had to face going for months in the kibbutzes, and the Nova, and etc. United Hatzalah is an ambulance service, and originally we weren't supposed to have them, and then I remember in one of the days, Lior, his neighbor, is a physiotherapist, and she was the physiotherapist of the person we interviewed, Moshe Weitzman. And Lior said, look, he has an amazing story. Do you want to interview him? And I said, yeah, okay, sure. Let's talk to him. And that's how it's strange, because he wasn't supposed to be in the movie, and then he becomes this thread throughout the entire film, yes. Right? And so because of that, we got access to a Google Drive there, most of the people use what's called B-roll selects. So a lot of the stuff that the media use, United Hatzalah gave them some select footage, a couple of clips, and everybody used those clips, and you saw them everywhere. And what's interesting about that was that their ambulances were on the road from the get-go. And the ambulances had a dash cam at the back and at the front. So they documented every single inch of those roads, right? Every single inch from from about 6:30 in the morning or 7 a.m. till about midnight, or actually till the next day even. We had footage from the next day as well. And I was like, huh. So I avoided the B-roll folder where everybody used. And I'm like, well, there's 50 hours here. Can I look at them? They said, yeah, nobody really looks through them. So you can look through them. So I started looking through all of this 50 hours of footage. And within that 50 hours of footage, I started realizing this is way about 2 months after we filmed, that the people who I featured in their stories in the movie on the road, well, there's their body on the side of the road, and there's their car. And I could pinpoint and really create this journey of carnage, unfortunately, that happened, and not just talk about it, not just have somebody talk about it, but rather visually illustrate it and prove it. And that was my number one thing that I wanted to do, was prove things, because unfortunately we are dealing with sociopaths and anti-Semites that demand that we prove that we were murdered, that we prove that our people were raped, right? All of these anti-Semites, these intellectual, most unfortunately from the progressive side of the political map, all of these so-called academics don't believe that women were raped, that Jewish women were raped. Everybody else, yes. Jewish women, no. You have to prove it, show it to us. Everybody else, we believe there was a genocide. Jews, no, prove it, show it to us. So that footage really helped me illustrate what was done. Second source was Hamas's footage, everything that was uploaded.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that, because it's beyond belief, really, that Hamas would film all their barbarism, show it to the world, and then the next step was people said, no, it's not real. Yet there they are showing what they're doing.
It's not, to me, it wasn't beyond belief, because if you see the patterns of Islamic radicalization, Islamic terrorism, and extremism, this is what they do. There's no difference than what happened to the Yazidis, to the Assyrians, to Christians around the Middle East. When I was doing my film about the Yazidi genocide from 2014, sorry, I got them confused, but really, is there a big difference? ISIS was doing the exact same thing. They were showing footage of them burning women. They were showing footage of themselves decapitating people, shooting them. All the footage that I showed in Forgotten on Sinjar, my movie about the Yazidis, that was ISIS footage, right? These psychos, this sociopaths, barbaric terrorists from across the spectrum of Islamic radicalization want the world to see what they do, because for them, this is a way that they're very proud of this savage mentality. Plus, it's a way to instill fear in people. So they had no qualms or problems filming it. In fact, every unit of Hamas, right, 10 to 20 units on motorcycles and their Toyota vans or whatever, had a GoPro, sometimes even two. There is so much footage out there that the IDF has in their hands and the Israeli government that they refuse to release. And one day somebody will actually make another film about the roads or whatever using that horrific footage, because it exists, because they filmed it. They were so proud to film it. And you said it accurately. It's actually shocking. They posted it. Also, by the way, their live streams on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook, if I was able to get my hands on a few, because it was immediately taken off, but I was able to get my hands on some, it's all there. They were so proud to do this. And it speaks volumes about a society that glorifies death, but not only glorifies death, glorifies murder and savagery to this extent that they have to, broadcast it live across social media. That speaks volumes about the society and the people who defend this society.
How do you get this stuff out of your head so that you can sleep?
I don't, and I sleep, and because I think I think there's something in terms of, because of all the films I've done, and because of travels around the world and a lot in third world countries, listening to awful stories, that I'm not desensitized. I really do feel it, and I think it comes across in the film, right? But there's me as an individual, but there's also me as a filmmaker. Mm-hmm. And I think the camera and being that filmmaker, sort of something, there was a block in my head that says, you're here to do a job, you're here to make a film. And as hard as it is, there's a point to it, right? There's a point to making a film like The Killing Roads. And the point is to educate people, but also beyond anything else is combat the denial and that anti-Semitism that exists with the truth of what occurred on the October 7th.
When I watch the Israelis in your film, in particular the mothers, because we all have a soft spot for our moms. I know I do.
Same here. My mom.
Right. I was watching the moms speak, and I was trying to deliberate, and I wanted to ask you this. On one hand, they seem so inordinately strong. They seem like such powerful, powerful people who have gone through so much in life, and now many of them losing their children on October 7th. And yet there were moments where I could see the cracks, where I could see the vulnerability. Tell me about the Israelis and how they responded to October 7th.
I think, Israel is always a nation in trauma. Always. Sometimes it's less, sometimes, but now it's definitely more. The 7 impacted everyone on every level. When I was filming there last year, I can tell you that it was palpable. You could really feel it. You could really feel the sadness. It was 5 months removed, right? So it was still very fresh in a lot of people's minds. And you really felt that sadness, that I think the existential, the threat of being destroyed was no longer there as it maybe was the first few months. By that time, the IDF was taking over Gaza. The north was still an issue, but it wasn't as bad. So the threat of whether or not Israel will survive as a nation wasn't there the way it was probably a few weeks removed from the 7th, but the sadness was still there, and most likely still there to this day. And that, to me, that I could see with a lot of people that I came across. The mothers that we feature, and those that we don't, right? We interviewed 21 people for the film. We focus on 7. Are such amazing and powerful, strong women. One of them, her son was a DJ, so she now wakes up every morning listening to his sets.
Yes.
She goes to parties with his friends. She lives the life that he had, and she's enjoying. And because of that, she is able to enjoy life. She's able to move forward. Others, they visit the gravestone every day, and that's their lives, but they move on. And that's the resilience of Israel, resilience of the Jewish people in general, but the resilience really of Israel, that despite everything, it moves on. And it'll move on from the 7th, and it'll politics aside, it's a remarkable country that's able to do things that no other country is able to do, considering the circumstances it exists in. And the people there are just absolutely remarkable. And I think, despite all of the grief and the sadness, they'll come out stronger. And it's not just a cliche to say that, right? Because we say that all the time. because what else do we have, right? You want to hold on to something positive. But I truly do believe that, Israel is a remarkable, resilient country. The people there are absolutely some of the strongest people that you'll ever find anywhere in the world. And they'll come out of this stronger and hopefully more united. Doesn't seem that way maybe today, but hopefully you'll have individuals and leaders and politicians on all sides of the political spectrum setting their bloody effing egos aside and actually caring about the state. And that's no shot in one particular politician. They're all like that. I can say it firsthand since I've been following them for 6 years, making a movie about the never-ending Israeli election cycle. They're very much all like that, and I hope and pray and yearn for the days when Israeli politicians put the country instead of their own egos and their own, desires. And I think that day will come, and hopefully the 7th, that reckoning will force people to start looking at the kind of people who run Israel. Whether from the left or the right, by the way. I have many issues with the left as I do with the right. Let's just put that out there. And people who follow me, I think, very much know that.
Igal, I want to sort of stay with this train of thought with the Israelis themselves. I was at a unveiling yesterday. My dear friend Ellie Rubenstein's mother, Esther, she should rest in peace. And we have a friend who's here in town. His name is Dennis Klein. And I've interviewed his wife, Gabby, who's a doctor, mostly for the Haredi community in Israel. And their son on October 7th was in the South, and he was an IDF soldier. And he held off Hamas terrorists for hours and hours and hours together with his teammates, as they call them. He was injured and clearly traumatized and has spent time since then rehabilitating. When I met him at the cemetery yesterday, I had, they call it in Hebrew, tzmarmoret. I had goosebumps just shaking his hand, because to me, there's Theodore Herzl, there's the great Menachem Begin, there's all these giborim, as we call them, warriors throughout history. And then there's Dennis's son, Shlomo Klein, who fought off terrorists on October 7th for hours and hours and hours, injured. And I was so taken by this young man standing in front of me who was really so humble and just so ordinary, just so regular. And then imagining what he had gone through on that day. Now, you said that every day was different, but every day you were full of grief. You said my heart was broken every single day. And I get that. And I still wonder how it is that you were able to complete this film and then go into post-production, what it is about yourself. Is it the Israeli inside of you?
I don't know. I really don't know. I don't really think about it. I mean, look, I've lived in Canada for, doing the math quickly, 37 years now. So I'm more Canadian, despite what people in the community think, because I do have a big mouth. But I'm more Canadian than I am Israeli, and I'm very much proud of the fact that I am both. I don't shy away from saying that I'm from Israel. If somebody wants to say that I'm Israeli, absolutely, I embrace that. I love that. But there's a lot of Canadian in me as well. I don't know if it's the Israeli thing. I think it's just, the one thing I will say that I think I take from Israel, maybe because when I was as a child, or maybe because I go back so much and I spend so much of my time and work there, is that no BS attitude, the tachlis attitude. And that is, things need to get done. No matter what, I'll get it done. I think that is very much an Israeli, an aspect of being Israeli. And I think I took that. And so the same applies here. We didn't have a budget for this film. We GoFunded, we did some GoFundMe fundraising, but we didn't reach anywhere near what we were supposed to reach. So there was no budget. But I said, okay, I'm gonna get this done no matter what. And I started reaching out to people, and some people donated this thing, and some people, and Pino Halili, who's amazing, gave me post-production in terms of the color correction and the mix. He's just absolutely brilliant, and everybody should use him. When he's absolutely brilliant, and he said, he contacted me and he said, I want to be involved right away. And so, I knew the film will get done no matter what. I knew that it had to be released during the memorial, or during the 1 year anniversary of the 7th, right? I knew that it had to be released during that week. That was sort of my intention, and I said, okay, I have a deadline. Let's meet that deadline, and that was pretty much it. I don't really think about how or this. As a filmmaker, you want to get the film done, and that was my main goal. But beyond just getting the film done, I wanted to get it done so people can see it, experience, and realize and really understand the reality of what occurred in the 7th. And that's why I made the decision to release it for free, right? Because I think just before we went on, we had a small conversation. I had people who wanted to invest in the film. I had a broadcaster who wanted to show the film in Canada, and I said, and I'm grateful to those people, but I said, but I'm still releasing it for free on the 1st. Well, how are we gonna make money, or how? And I was like, I don't know. I don't care. Like, especially with the broadcaster, because I've been trying to get that broadcaster for 30 years to notice me. And it was heartbreaking to say no. But the original intention, and also the promise I made to people in Israel who took part in the film, that this will be seen all over the world for free. So as many people as possible can watch it. I had to follow through on that.
So this was clearly a work of passion for you.
Yeah.
Did the world respond mostly or somewhat the way you wanted to?
Look, I think for the most part, I wish we were able to get more influencers to share it. So if there are any Jewish influencers out there, some who did the job, they did it amazingly, and we were able to reach millions of people because of them. Because no one knows who the hell I am, and I don't have that social media reach. And so I'm very thankful for the people who shared it. I wish more people would share it, bigger names, because I really think that this is a film that, as hard as it is to watch, gives a very clear understanding of what happened on the 7th. So on that front, I think people who watched it, the millions of people who watched it, have only received, the majority of responses have been overwhelmingly positive. There's always the trolls and the terrorist supporters out there, but couldn't care less. And then the reviews and from Jewish media and non-Jewish media has been unbelievably positive. I recently got a review that I was so blown away, and I had to think, do I know this person? Just because it was such, this person doesn't know me, lives in the States, watched the movie, and wrote this amazing, and he's a critic, and he wrote this amazing review. I was blown away. Nobody has said so many kind things to me about my filmmaking.
What did he say?
No, just, first of all, he called me a sophisticated filmmaker. Many would argue I'm not, including friends. But it was very nice, and he got the film. He understood, like, he got all the little things that I was trying to do, the way the film was broken down, the journey where it starts off and you think, okay, this is the worst, and then it takes you to another level, and you think, no, this is the worst, and then it takes you to and it really sort of takes you on this. Even when you think it can get more worse than this, unfortunately, it does.
Absolutely, that's how I felt. Yes.
And he got that. And he tuned into some of the filmmaking aspect of the music, the fact that it looked like it felt like a horror movie, and the soundtrack and the sound that was sort of there as well from a filmmaking perspective. That's what I wanted. I wanted to do a horror movie that was a documentary, a real life horror movie, because this is what it was. Worse than any slasher film out there, worse than anything you can even that fiction can imagine. This reality was more horrific than anything. And I wanted that to come through. A good friend of mine, who I haven't spoken to in many years, they work for the UN and they do a lot of investigations around the world. And they reached out a couple of days ago and they said something very nice, because what they do is, they go and talk to people who suffer either genocide or mass, attacks. They were just in Ukraine, and they asked, like, how did you get people to open up to you? Like, how long did you spend with them? Because this is what we do. And I said, we interviewed them. And I said, that's it? I'm like, yeah, because they could feel the emotion, they could feel the road, they could feel the environment, and they go, this is what we try to do when we're out there, trying to make people in the world aware of what's happening. And that, I took that as, something that was really kind of a nice compliment to get, because that's really what I wanted. I wanted people to sense what that day was all about. And sitting and re-editing and tweaking here and taking a couple of seconds there and thinking about the sound and how to build that up. That really played that, from a filmmaker perspective, that when people see that, aside from the content, that it's extremely important, that makes you feel good as a filmmaker, because it's also your craft as well.
Within that light, I was wondering to myself, you were sitting in the car with a young woman whose girlfriend had been abducted and taken into Gaza. And I watched you as she spoke about her friend. She said, we had great times together. And she's not a politician. She's a girl who studies and wants to enjoy life. And then you were standing on the side of the road with a young woman who had been married to a fellow who was murdered on that day. And he was practicing, he was working out in order to do the Ironman competition. And her words to you were, he called me and he said, please come and get me. And she paused, Igal, and she said, I tried.
Yeah.
She said, I tried. And I'm just wondering where you were at that very moment when these people said such stirring, sad, melancholy things to you about their loved ones.
You just look at them and there's not much you can say.
Did you have rules in your head about your response, or was it just organic?
It's just organic. I just looked at them. I didn't really talk. I mean, you see the film. I don't try to be, I hate documentaries in which the director goes there and suddenly, the savior complex. Look at me, I'm going to go and I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to, the Michael Moore approach to filmmaker. And I don't like that, because this has nothing to do with me. The mechanism of you have to create a film, and you have to, okay, why does this film exist? It exists because I, as a filmmaker, go back home to see what happened on the 7th. That's the justification for the film. We frame it up right as the film starts. But after that, this is not my story. Who cares about me? At certain moments, you see my reactions, but it's only 2 or 3 moments, and that's it, because I felt they were strong enough and they should have been there. But beyond that, it's not my story, nor should it be, and nor should my, how I respond and nobody cares about me when it comes to that. We want to hear from the people who actually endured it. We want to hear from the people who actually suffered loss. And I think a lot of filmmakers' egos get in the way. I hate being on camera. The majority of my films, I'm not there. You can barely hear me. I'm not there. But for this specific film, it was one way to make it. And so we limited me on screen. But I think, you're standing there, and I had the exact same feeling that you did when you watched it. When she says, he called me, I tried to get to him, and she pauses, and I tried. And her eyes are so big, so big, and they're watering. And you can sense that she's thinking that, blaming herself for not getting there. And then she said, I really tried. And Lior pans down to her hands, and her hands are like this. That broke me. In editing, that broke me while we were doing it, because I noticed everything. It was very hard, and then you're there, and then you also don't know, do I put my arms around them, and is that a cliche? And I'm like, no, I need to be sort of away from it, because me coming there for an hour to spend with them, and all of a sudden I'm their best friend. Again, it feels manufactured, and I didn't want any of that. The one moment where I think you see me is after we interviewed Stav Geta's mother on the road. The one thing that got to me was more the plane, and you see it's on a wide shot, but you see me because I do this thing, this tick with my face. When she plays her voice and her stops singing, Ayom Yom Huledet to her daughter, I think, and that's so sad because you also know that that's it. She won't be singing Ayom Yom Huledet ever again to her daughter, ever, and that was extremely sad because I don't have kids, but I have nieces, I have nephews, I have friends who have kids, and I can just imagine, and that was very, very sad. And I think the moment after they left, and I'm on the car, sort of leaning over, and I didn't know Lior was filming me because he just put the camera down, sneaky man that he is, and that was an honest reaction to what happened. I really hated making a film. I really did. Like this is not a film I wish ever existed, but it has to exist because of what happened.
Did you cry at all? Did you sob?
I think there was a moment where I did, more so. There's a scene, we never put it in, because again, it felt manufactured, but it was honest. We played Amit Man's song that she sings with Knisiat HaSechel. And Shum Davar Lo Yifga Bi. And we were driving down 232, and we put the song on, and I think that's where I had tears, and that's where I cried. I don't think I sobbed, but just I cried, and we filmed it. But at the end, I just felt, again, it's not that I'm afraid of showing emotion. I just don't want things to come off as manufactured. And I think especially North American style documentarians love doing that. It's probably the reality TV impact where we want to show the emotions and things along those lines. Even if it's real, to me, it always comes off as, look at this jack off trying to get some sort of an emotional beat from people. And it just comes off as something. So when Lior filmed me and I didn't know that he was filming me, that to me, I wasn't aware of the camera. That to me was more honest than, even though I was legitimately emotional, but I knew the camera was filming me, it became something that felt manufactured.
Igal, of the 21 that you filmed, or the 7 that you focused on,
yeah,
once you had completed the interviews with them, what more often than not was their response to you as you wrapped up and you separated?
Very positive. They thanked me for coming, because again, nobody really came to hear their stories. There's so many stories, and people forget, right? And then the families are left after the 7th and the memorials and everything else, and we shall dance again, and this exhibition and that exhibition and this and that. They're left alone.
Yeah, the lights are out.
Sorrow, yeah. Right? And so they thanked me for doing the film. They thanked us as a crew, not just me, and because it was an effort, a crew effort. So they thanked us for doing this. And then when the first trailer came out, and when the second trailer came out, they were really very much appreciative. But a funny thing happened when they watched the film. Not a lot of people got back to me. Moshe did; he loved it, and Hatzalah loved the film in terms of they were pushing it, and it was because I don't think they were aware, and all of a sudden it came out, and it was very nice. I think a lot of them were in shock because they weren't aware of the footage that we had, because we weren't aware when we were filming. Daniela Gandhi, for example, we had her footage from inside the car, the POV look as she's lying there for 7 hours, but she never knew that there was footage of her being rescued off the dash cam. I didn't know until I found it by sheer chance. I think it was like the 28-hour, the 30th hour of footage. And I'm like, wait a minute. And I went back, and for her, she was so grateful because I sent her the footage. And I was very careful because, again, these are people who have gone through trauma. But it filled a hole for her because she wasn't aware of what happened at all. And she sees herself being carried by these people who saved her and then carried into another ambulance. And so I got these kind of responses. Some of them, it was too hard for them. It was too hard for them. It wasn't that it was just too hard for them because they also, even though we blurred the bodies, right? They knew it was their loved ones there.
Yeah.
And it was very hard for them because they saw where it happened, even though they knew where it was, but now they saw it a mere few hours after. And I don't know what they imagined, but now to actually see the location, to see the car, to see the body there, again, blurred, but you know it's there. I think it was very hard for them. And overall, it was a positive response, but it's not the kind of film where there's anything positive about it. So if you look at other films, amazing films, and everybody should watch them, like We Shall Dance Again, or maybe some of the other films, there's always that positive, we'll get through this, and now rah, 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 but we shall dance again. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, unity of the people.
Yeah, this film has none of it. None. There was even 1 or 2 moments that had some, not laughter, but you could like smirk or like smile. Sometimes you put those in documentaries to kind of break it up. No, I took those out. I wanted people to be in a constant state of mourning.
Yes.
Because that's what that day was. It's not that I'm a sociopath who needs to, milk this and perverse the. No, this is what the day was. It was a constant day of mourning. And I didn't want people for 1 second to forget that. Not even for 1 second. And that was a conscious choice in terms of when I created the film. With everything from the shots to the sound to the music, I chose everything, every single aspect, because I really wanted people to get that sense, because that's how I felt and that's how they felt, and that was extremely important.
Igal, I felt very strongly on October 7th itself and afterward that I had to be involved, if you will, in the solution or in some way to help our people, mourn and then rebuild. So on October 7th itself, I did a service at Congregation Habonim. It was Simchat Torah. And I had watched the footage that morning on TV and I was spellbound. I couldn't believe it. It was a bit like when the Twin Towers went down. I didn't believe it at first.
Yeah.
Right. And I stood in front of the congregation and I said to them, so you've all seen the footage of what's going on in Israel. Most of them looked at me like, no, we haven't. Services are early. And this had just started earlier in the morning. But I stood before them and I tried to bring the congregation together so that they could have a sense of, as we call it, achdut, unity. We, the Jewish people, we will overcome this. We will survive this. We've gone through terrible things in history, and we've strengthened ourselves. And then today, even today, doing this interview with you, this is an interview of passion for me. It really is. I wanted to do this because of what you've accomplished, and I want to get your message out there for as many people as possible to see. I want to be part of the betterment, the strengthening, the enhancement of our Jewish people. Is this what this film was to you?
I think I in a way. So for me, and you see some of my posts online. I'm very passionate when it comes to Israel,
Yes, you are.
and I would honestly say and people, I've said this publicly and before, and people know me, Israel is my greatest love, and I love that country very much. Ever since I was a child, and to me, it was very important to make this film because I see what's happening out there. I've been talking about this in films for 20 years. This is nothing new. This wasn't a shock to see what's happening on the streets of Toronto, on the streets of North America. It wasn't a shock to me. I saw it on the outskirts 20 years ago. Now it's mainstream. And for me, using my skill set was the best way to fight anti-Semitism and was the best way to tell Israel's story. That was the most important thing for me to do. That was the most important thing for me to do when it came to the seventh, to tell the story of the seventh from, and not just tell the story, but use facts to tell the story so people can't deny it. And visually illustrate that so people can't deny it. That was the most important aspect for me, more than anything. In my head, the way my head works, it was also a big FU to my colleagues in my industry, a lot of them, Jewish ones included, who went on to excuse and justify it's horrible, but ... people. That was a big FU to all of them. So that was also a big reason for me to do it, because I was sick and tired of these people using their identity, their heritage to justify rapists and murderers and genocidal savages in the form of Hamas and other Palestinian groups and other Palestinians. So all of that played a role, all of it, because that's really what I am. When I make films for a living, I don't just make films because I do a one-off and everything. For the last 25 years, I've made 1 or 2 films at least a year and television shows. But then every now and again, I do something that's very personal, usually 5 to 6 years. And this was it. And it was important for me to make it because I saw what was happening out there. And, a film that many have said is very powerful can have a lasting impact. Mm-hmm. When I pitched this to our Front Street broadcaster that gets our tax dollars, without mentioning any names, the feedback, and I'll never forget it, was, this is a current events piece, and we've already done current events pieces about this.
Yes.
To which I responded, and obviously they sent me the Jewish person on the board to send me that email. To which I responded with, no, it's not. This is a historic piece. This is a piece that, like Shoah movies, in 10 years somebody can watch, or in 20 years somebody can watch and really understand what happened on the 7th. Because unfortunately, in Canada, once we were 2-3 weeks removed from the 7th, because as Jews, we were allowed to mourn. There was sympathy for us for about 2 weeks. And after that, that's it. Genocide in Gaza, right? Actually, the next day in certain aspects, in certain parts of the city, like Mississauga, it was already a genocide the next day. But which is complete false. Let's just put it out there. But so to me, making a film like this has long-lasting impact because, again, in 10, 20, 30, 40 years, when people want to learn about the 7th, when people want to understand what happened on the 7th, hopefully that film will still be free and will still be online, and the website will still be on, thekillingroads.com. Shameless plug, thekillingroads.com.
Yes.
Should have probably written that on my name, but anyways, people will watch it and have a very clear understanding of what happened on the 7th, at least on the road and in Nova, right? We don't deal with the kibbutzim. We don't deal with the communities of Sderot and Ofakim. But at least there, it will give them a really clear-cut understanding of what happened. And not only will it give them understanding, it will visually prove to them the savagery that the Palestinian people from Gaza unleashed on Israel on October 7th.
Is this part of your legacy? Are you interested in your own legacy?
Well, no, I don't want to think legacy. I still have many, 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 many years, hopefully, if anybody wants to fund them, of movies coming. But it's definitely one of the films that I'm most proud of. You know, there's marks, you know, we were talking before. In 2005, I made a film called Not in My Name, which with Talia Klein. And the film looked at the political Jewish left in North America. And people came out against the film and said, no, we're crazy. What are you talking about? You don't know what you're saying. These people are on the outskirts, etc., etc. And we said, they're on the outskirts now, but in 5 to 10 years, they're going to be the mainstream of the political Jewish left. And virtually everyone we featured in the movie plays a key role in what I believe, my personal belief, is the extreme Jewish left in Canada and North America that I think vilifies and demonizes Israel. Again, my personal opinion, they might disagree. You know, so, and then 20 years later, I make this film. To me, you know, in between, I've made some really great films, and we talked about The Sheik, which I love, produced by
I love it
the
too.
Megan boys, Gian and Paige Megan, and it is a fun film and a great film, and I'm so proud of that film because people who know me know I love wrestling. In fact, John Cena turning heel was a historic event that I watched here in Toronto 2 weeks ago, and I'm gonna watch Raw tonight because I need to know what John Cena's gonna do.
I love that. Yeah.
You know, I watch wrestling religiously. I love wrestling, so making that film was a lot of fun, but it was very different. And you know, that's my career. My career has always been, I make a movie that's very serious, genocide, politics, etc., and then I'll do something about art or music because I don't want to be pigeonholed to one thing, even though people think I only make films about Jews in Israel, which is a large part, but not the only part. But I think the Killing Roads hold a very special place in when I look back. And one day, I think it'll be the film that, at least to this point, I'm most proud of. Not just because it's my latest film, because I think it has the most meaning for me. Yeah.
You ought to be proud of it, Igal, because it's a magnificent piece that you've produced. It's extraordinarily hard to get through, and I have my own experience that way. But that being said, you effectively got together exactly what you were trying to accomplish. And you're absolutely right. There are awful people out there in the world who deny October 7th, who deny anti-Semitism, who make us the culprit. We're the bad ones.
Yep.
And I think this piece will survive the challenges of time. And I indeed believe that people will be watching this in 20 years and you go, yes, this is what happened on the roads in southern Israel on October 7th. So as I say in Hebrew, kol hakavod to you. I would like to dedicate this show to the passing of Shlomo Mansour, who was 85 years old, from Kibbutz Kisuvim, who was died in captivity in Gaza, to Ohad Yahalomi, 50, was one of the 4 deceased hostages returned to Israel, and of course to Shiri Bibas, Ariel Bibas, and Kfir Bibas. The little ones were 4 years old, 9 months old, and their mom, Shiri. Let's remember them today as we talk about this most important documentary. Now, Igal, if people want to watch this film, where can they find it?
So the film is available online for free, and the best place is probably the film's website, which is www.thekillingroads.com, thekillingroads.com. You can watch it there, and I hope you do. And it's also available on X and on YouTube, but would love it if you watch it at the website. And yeah, it's just
I'll make sure.
And also the documentary channel. If you have a subscription to the documentary channel in the US, It's also available on the documentarychannel.com. It's one of the films that they're featuring.
I will make sure that when I post this show,
Great.
that I will include a link to it. So, in conclusion, Igal Hecht, would you say today that you're a happy man, a tamapsut? Are you satisfied?
You know, Jews are never mabsuti. They're never.
Not entirely, anyway.
I'm content. I am content. Let's go with content. Content is good. No, I'm happy. Yeah, I'm happy about the film and other things, and I just wish that people would stop using Jews as an excuse, for all the ill will things in the world. And more so, I wish Canada, I wish we didn't have 670% rise in anti-Semitism in this country. And I wish colleagues and friends didn't justify anti-Semitism, etc., just because they can say it's anti-Zionism as opposed to what it is. But that wasn't your question, but I'll take it there. That's really what I sort of, in the next 35 days, am going to concentrate on, because I think that, we're in a place right now in Canada as a Jewish community that we've never been in before.
Yes.
And I think it's not our paranoia. I think it's true. When they justify Jews not walking on campus freely, like it's 1930s Germany, that's a problem. When our media and the media that I'm part of, and my colleagues who always spoke to me about the Holocaust and how awful it is, and now I know that they'll be the first one to turn in anybody who hides in the attic, that's problematic. Realizing that, 20 years of friendships were thrown out the window because people were celebrating the murder of my family and friends. That's it's a place where I think a lot of us as a Jewish community need to stop excusing it, stop trying to understand it. I don't want to understand these individuals. I don't. I want to fight them in terms of, not physically, in terms of sharing the truth as opposed to their lies, and that would make me very happy. That makes me happy. I know it's a twisted way of thinking about things, but
no, it's a good way. It's a good way.
That does make me happy.
Very often we debate within amongst our own people, who's a Jew, who is a good Jew, and very often we'll go down the road of somebody who's Shomer Shabbat, Shomer Kashrut, and learns Torah, and to me that's very important stuff. But as I used to say to people when they would say to me, "Oh, you started VAYAKHEL, a Jewish humanitarian organization, and you're helping the non-Jews," they would say you're helping the Goyim. I would say, listen, the Jewish people we're a pie. And if you slice that pie up, there are Haredi Jews and Kol HaKavod. There should be. Let them do what they do. But there are Reform Jews, there are conservative Jews, there are humanitarian Jews. Every single Jew, a Jew who makes a documentary about October 7th, is as important as any other Jew within that pie. Yeah. And that's the message I want to send out to you today. You're a good Jew, and you've done a great job. And I thank you very much for that. I do.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching and for listening. And as I say at the conclusion of all my podcasts, life is very short. And for those of us who have lost parents, in my case, my sister, and other people whom I love dearly, my brother-in-law, you realize that we're here for a very short time. And I think it behooves us while we're here, it's to find our stride in life. It's to find that thing in life that's at the very core of our soul, of our spirit, and to run with it and to nurture it, right? And to shape it and to mold it. Find that thing in life that perhaps you could say, I was put on this earth for that. And I think it's safe to say that when you listen to this interview with Igal Hecht, that thank God he was put on this earth. Thank God he found his gift, his matana, as they say in Hebrew, that gift of creating documentaries, of creating films, and poignant ones and important ones, and that ones documentaries we can grow through. Take that away from this interview and find that thing in life that you're passionate about, and ask around. Ask other people who you see, they're doing a good job in life. Ask them how they arrived there, because that is crucial in our very, very short time on this earth. It's to find purpose and it's to find meaning as Jews, as human beings, as lovers of Israel. And if you can find it, you'll see there's a Hebrew term that I used a few minutes ago. It's actually Arabic, mabsut, which is a sense of satisfaction. Find that, be mabsut in life. So thank you very much for listening. I'm very grateful. And please watch this film. It's an important one. Igal, throw out the website again, please.
Sure, it's www.thekillingroads.com. Once again, thekillingroads.com.
Okay, thank you so much. Sei gesund, and we will be back soon.